I still remember the exact moment I realized my marriage was beyond saving. Not the day Lisa told me she was pregnant. That was the day I foolishly thought it might be salvageable. No, it was 3 weeks later, standing frozen in our hallway, hearing my wife's laughter echo through our home as she revealed to her lover that our child didn't exist. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Mark Daniels. 6 months ago, I was a successful investment banker with a beautiful home, a thriving career, and a marriage that had crumbled into something unrecognizable. Today, I'm still a successful investment banker with a beautiful home and a thriving career. The marriage, however, is gone, and the story of how it ended is one I've never told anyone, until now. The first sign of trouble came shortly after our 5th anniversary. The subtle changes were easy to dismiss at first. The way Lisa's smile would fade when she thought I wasn't looking, her increasing late nights at the office, the growing silence during our dinners. I tried everything: date nights, couples therapy, even a second honeymoon to the Maldives where we'd first fallen in love. Nothing worked. By our 6th anniversary, we occupied the same house but lived in different worlds. I slept in the guest bedroom. We communicated through terse text messages and post-it notes on the refrigerator. The woman I had vowed to spend my life with had become a stranger, and I had become someone I didn't recognize, resentful, suspicious, and perpetually exhausted from trying to save something that was already dead. After 18 months of this slow torture, I made my decision. I contacted James Merrick, an old college friend who had become one of Boston's most sought-after divorce attorneys. We met for lunch at a small Italian restaurant far from my office, where the chances of running into someone I knew were minimal. "The papers will be ready by the end of the month," James said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Based on what you've told me, this should be relatively straightforward. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, so assets acquired during the marriage will be divided fairly. You mentioned no children, which simplifies things." I nodded, staring at the folder as if it might bite me. 6 years of marriage reduced to legal terminology and asset distributions. "And what if she contests it?" James took a sip of his water. "She can try, but your prenup is solid. Unless she can prove you've been hiding assets or engaged in some form of misconduct, the terms we've outlined should hold. Have you decided when you'll tell her?" "This weekend," I said, feeling a strange mixture of dread and relief. "She's coming back from visiting her sister in Chicago. I figured we should have the conversation face to face." James nodded approvingly. "That's the right approach. Just remember to stay calm, stick to the facts, and avoid recriminations. The less emotional the conversation, the smoother the process will be." I left the restaurant with the folder tucked into my briefcase, feeling as if I were carrying a bomb. That night, I made detailed notes on what I would say to Lisa, rehearsing the speech in my mind until the words lost all meaning. I wanted to be fair, but firm, compassionate, but clear. Our marriage was over, and it was time for both of us to move on. Lisa's flight was scheduled to arrive at 2:15 p.m. on Saturday. I spent the morning cleaning the house, a nervous habit I'd developed whenever significant conversations loomed. By noon, every surface gleamed, and I had run out of ways to distract myself. I sat in our living room, the divorce papers neatly arranged on the coffee table, and waited. At 3:30 p.m., I heard her key in the lock. The sound sent my heart racing, and I straightened my posture, mentally reviewing my opening lines one last time. She appeared in the doorway, her weekend bag still in hand. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. For a moment, I felt a pang of the old affection, remembering how we used to greet each other after business trips. The rushed embraces, the passionate kisses that suggested the separation, however brief, had been unbearable. Those days were long gone. "You're home," she said, her voice flat. "I am." I gestured to the chair across from me. Can we talk for a minute? It's important. Something flickered across her face. Apprehension, perhaps, or resignation. She set her bag down and moved to the chair, perching on its edge as if preparing for a quick escape. "What is it?" she asked, her gaze drifting to the papers on the table. I took a deep breath. "Lisa, I think we both know things haven't been working between us for a long time. We've tried everything, and nothing's changed. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I believe it's time I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us, impossible and disorienting. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "What?" She met my gaze, her eyes suddenly swimming with tears. "I'm pregnant, Mark. That's why I went to Chicago. I needed to tell Jen first, to figure out how to tell you. I know our marriage has been difficult, but this changes everything, doesn't it?" I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. A child. After years of discussions about waiting for the right time, after months of emotional distance and silent dinners, Lisa was telling me we had created a life together. When did you find out?" I managed to ask. 3 weeks ago." She wiped at her eyes. "I didn't believe it at first. We've been so distant and it wasn't like we were trying. But then I took 3 tests, and they were all positive. I saw a doctor in Chicago to confirm it." I looked at the divorce papers on the table, the carefully prepared notes beside them. Everything I had planned to say suddenly seemed irrelevant. "Say something," Lisa urged, her voice breaking. "Please." What could I say? That I had been minutes away from ending our marriage? That I had already mourned what we once had and was ready to move on? That the timing of this news struck me as suspiciously convenient? Instead, I said the only thing that seemed appropriate. "This is unexpected." Her face fell. "I know it's a shock. It was for me, too. But Mark, maybe this is what we needed. A fresh start. Something to bring us back together." I studied her face, searching for signs of deception. Lisa had always been an open book to me. At least, she had been in the early years of our marriage. But the woman sitting across from me now was someone I no longer knew how to read. "I need some time to process this," I said finally. Lisa nodded, a small, hopeful smile playing at her lips. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm going to go unpack and rest a bit. The flight was exhausting, and apparently, first trimester fatigue is no joke." She rose from the chair, hesitated, then leaned down to press a kiss to my forehead, the first physical affection she had shown me in months. As she left the room, I remained frozen, staring at the divorce papers that now seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. That night, I lay awake in the guest bedroom, my mind racing. If Lisa was telling the truth, everything had changed. A child would bind us together for life, regardless of whether our marriage survived. If she was lying, but why would she lie about something so easily disproven? And to what end? The questions circled endlessly, keeping sleep at bay until the early hours of the morning. Over the next few weeks, Lisa transformed before my eyes. The cold, distant woman who had shared my home for the past year was replaced by someone almost unrecognizable, attentive, affectionate, and seemingly committed to rebuilding our relationship. She made breakfast each morning, asked about my day with apparent interest, and even suggested we start attending church again, something we had done together in the early years of our marriage. And then there were the pregnancy symptoms, the morning sickness that sent her rushing to the bathroom each day just as I was preparing to leave for work, the food aversions that necessitated a complete overhaul of our kitchen, the fatigue that had her napping each afternoon and turning in early each night. "The doctor says it's all normal," she assured me after a particularly dramatic bout of sickness. "It should ease up by the second trimester." I nodded, offering the supportive words expected of an expectant father. But beneath my calm exterior, doubts festered. Something about the situation felt wrong. The convenient timing, the sudden personality change, the way Lisa's symptoms seemed to appear precisely when I was around to witness them. James called several times, wondering why I hadn't proceeded with the divorce filing. I made vague excuses about needing more time, unable to bring myself to explain the new development. How could I tell him that the wife I had been ready to leave was now carrying my child? How could I admit that despite everything, a part of me hoped this might be the miracle that saved our marriage? 3 weeks after Lisa's announcement, she presented me with a printout from her doctor's visit. "Look," she said, her eyes shining with excitement, "our baby's first picture." I stared at the grainy ultrasound image, feeling a confusing mix of emotions. The small blob indicated with an arrow was supposedly my child, a new life created despite the emotional wasteland our marriage had become. "The doctor says everything looks perfect," Lisa continued, watching my reaction closely. "I'm about 9 weeks along. The due date is February 15th. I traced the outline of the image with my finger. "Did they let you hear the heartbeat?" A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed Lisa's face. "Not yet. Apparently, it's still too early for the Doppler to pick it up reliably. Next visit, though." I nodded, tucking the image into my wallet. That evening, I found myself searching medical websites, reading about fetal development and first trimester ultrasounds. According to several reputable sources, a heartbeat could typically be detected by vaginal ultrasound as early as 6 weeks, and by external Doppler between 10 and 12 weeks. If Lisa was 9 weeks along, as she claimed, shouldn't they have attempted to listen for the heartbeat? The following day, I called James and asked him to recommend a private investigator. He was surprised but didn't press for details, providing me with the name and number of a woman he described as discreet and thorough. Catherine Mills agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near my office the next afternoon. She was older than I expected, with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I explained my situation as succinctly as possible, leaving out the emotional complexities and focusing on the facts: a troubled marriage, plans for divorce, a surprise pregnancy announcement with timing that seemed suspicious. "And what exactly would you like me to investigate, Mr. Daniels?" she asked after I finished. "I need to know if my wife is actually pregnant," I said, the words feeling strange as they left my mouth. "And if she's not, I need to understand what game she's playing." Catherine nodded, taking notes in a small leather-bound notebook. "I'll need access to your home when your wife is out. Phone records would be helpful, as would any information about close friends or associates who might be involved." We spent the next half hour discussing logistics and her fee structure. As we were preparing to leave, she fixed me with a penetrating look. "Mr. Daniels, I feel obligated to ask, what will you do if your suspicions are confirmed? And what if they're not?" It was a fair question, and one I had been avoiding. "If I'm wrong, I'll do my best to be a good father, regardless of what happens with our marriage," I said slowly. "And if I'm right, I'll need your evidence to ensure she can't manipulate or defraud me any further." Catherine nodded, apparently satisfied. "I'll be in touch within the week." 3 days later, I returned home early from work, nursing a headache that had been building since lunch. Lisa's car was in the driveway, which was unusual. She typically spent Wednesday afternoons at her yoga class, followed by coffee with friends. I entered quietly, not wanting to disturb her if she was resting. The sound of her laughter drifted from the kitchen. Relaxed, uninhibited laughter, a sound I hadn't heard in our home for years. My headache forgotten, I moved silently down the hallway, stopping just short of the kitchen doorway. "He's swallowing it all," Lisa's voice, triumphant and smug. 9 months of lies for a lifetime of child support." I felt the blood drain from my face as a male voice responded, too low for me to make out the words. Lisa laughed again. No, he hasn't even questioned it. You should see him playing the devoted daddy-to-be. It's pathetic. More murmuring from the man. Of course the ultrasound worked. I told you my friend at the imaging center would help. She just gave me one from their files and changed the patient information. He didn't suspect a thing. I stood frozen, my suspicions confirmed in the most brutal way possible. My wife wasn't just lying about being pregnant. She was actively mocking me for believing her, sharing the joke with the man who was presumably her lover. Everything in me wanted to storm into the kitchen and confront them both. But some small, rational part of my brain held me back. If I revealed what I knew now, Lisa would simply deny it, cover her tracks, and become more careful. If I wanted justice, if I wanted to ensure she couldn't use this fabricated pregnancy to extort money from me, I needed more than an overheard conversation. I needed a plan. Silently, I retreated, slipping out the front door as quietly as I had entered. In my car, I sat shaking with a mixture of rage and a strange, detached calm. The woman I had loved, had built a life with, had pledged myself to before God and our families, had orchestrated an elaborate hoax designed to trap me in financial obligation to a child that didn't exist. I called Catherine Mills. "I need to meet with you as soon as possible," I said when she answered. "My suspicions were correct, and I need your help with something more extensive than we originally discussed." The next morning, I greeted Lisa with a kiss on the cheek and a cup of ginger tea, supposedly helpful for morning sickness, according to the websites I'd consulted. "You're in a good mood," she observed, accepting the tea with a puzzled smile. "I've been doing some thinking," I said, taking the seat across from her at our breakfast table. "About the baby, about us. I know I didn't react well initially, and I'm sorry for that. It was a shock." Lisa's eyes widened slightly. "That's understandable. It was a shock for me too." I reached across the table to take her hand. "But now that I've had time to process it, I'm excited. This is our chance to start fresh, to be the family I always hoped we would be someday." "Really?" The surprise in her voice was genuine. She had clearly expected more resistance. "Really?" I smiled, squeezing her hand. "In fact, I was thinking we should celebrate. A baby celebration, just for us. We could go to that resort in the Berkshires you've always wanted to try, maybe do some shopping for the nursery while we're there. What do you think?" Lisa's expression transformed from surprise to delight. "That sounds wonderful. But are you sure we can afford it? With the baby coming, we should be saving." I waved away her concern. "We're in good shape financially. Besides, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Our first child deserves a proper celebration." The weekend getaway was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I embarked on a campaign of enthusiastic father-to-be behavior that would have put any genuine expectant dad to shame. I researched baby products obsessively, ordered a stack of parenting books, and even started a college fund in the name of Baby Daniels, making sure Lisa saw the confirmation email. My sudden transformation seemed to both please and unsettle her. More than once, I caught her watching me with a calculating expression, as if trying to determine whether my change of heart was genuine or if I suspected her deception. "You've really embraced this whole daddy thing," she commented one evening as I assembled a crib I had insisted on ordering, despite her protests that it was too early. "Life's too short for half measures," I replied cheerfully. "Besides, I want everything to be perfect for our little miracle." The word miracle made her flinch almost imperceptibly. Good. Let her feel some guilt about the magnitude of her lie. While maintaining my facade of joyful anticipation, I was working with Catherine Mills and James Merrick behind the scenes, building a case that would leave Lisa no room for escape when the moment of reckoning arrived. Catherine had installed discrete recording devices in our home and provided me with a specialized app that archived Lisa's text messages and phone calls. James had helped me draw up a series of complex legal documents that would prove crucial to my plan. 4 weeks after overhearing Lisa's kitchen confession, I was ready to execute the next phase. "I've been thinking about our future," I told Lisa over dinner at her favorite restaurant. "With the baby coming, we should update our financial planning." Lisa took a sip of her water, her face carefully neutral. "What did you have in mind?" "Nothing major, just some adjustments to make sure you and the baby are protected. My financial advisor recommended we set up a trust for the baby, maybe move some assets around for tax purposes." I reached for her hand across the table. "I want to make sure that if anything ever happened to me, you'd both be taken care of." Lisa's eyes gleamed with barely concealed interest. "That sounds sensible. What would we need to do?" "Just sign some paperwork. I've already had James draw up the necessary documents. He's an old friend, so he did it as a favor. We can go over everything this weekend if you're feeling up to it." "James Merrick? Your college friend?" A flicker of alarm crossed her face. "Isn't he a divorce attorney?" I laughed, as if the question were absurd. "He does all kinds of family law. Trust me, these are standard protections for a growing family. Nothing to worry about." That Saturday, James arrived at our home with an impressively thick portfolio of legal documents. He greeted Lisa warmly, congratulating her on the pregnancy with well-practiced sincerity. "Mark has been very thorough in his desire to protect you and your child," James said as he spread the papers across our dining room table. "What we've put together is essentially a comprehensive family protection plan. It addresses everything from healthcare directives to educational trusts." For the next hour, James walked us through document after document, explaining each in just enough detail to sound thorough while glossing over the critical provisions hidden within the dense legal language. Lisa nodded along, her eyes occasionally glazing over as James delved into technical terminology. The key documents, the ones that would ultimately spring my trap, were presented as routine asset protection measures. In reality, they included provisions that would transfer all of my significant assets into irrevocable trusts with specific distribution conditions that Lisa could never meet if she were lying about the pregnancy. Require documented medical proof of the child's existence before any funds could be accessed. Include fraud provisions that would not only deny Lisa any financial benefit, but would actually penalize her financially if the pregnancy proved to be fabricated. "It's a lot to take in, I know," James said sympathetically as he pushed the final document toward Lisa. "But everything here is standard protection for a family in your situation." Lisa hesitated, pen hovering over the signature line. "Should I have my own lawyer look these over, just as a formality?" James smiled reassuringly. "Of course, if that would make you more comfortable. Though I should mention that any changes would require us to redraft all the interconnected documents, which could take several weeks. And Mark mentioned you were hoping to have everything in place before your next trimester." Lisa glanced at me, then back at the papers. I could almost see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Delay and risk arousing suspicion, or sign and secure what she believed would be a financial windfall. Greed won out. She signed every document, barely skimming the contents. After James left, Lisa wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing herself against me. That was exhausting, but I'm glad we did it. It feels good knowing everything is taken care of. I returned her embrace, fighting the revulsion I felt at her touch. I'd do anything to protect my family. The irony of my words wasn't lost on me. 2 weeks later, I set the final phase of my plan in motion. "I made an appointment for us with Dr. Abernathy," I announced over breakfast, "for this Thursday." Lisa looked up from her phone, confusion creasing her brow. "Who?" "Dr. Abernathy. He's supposedly the best obstetrician in Boston. A colleague's wife used him for all 3 of their children and couldn't say enough good things." I smiled enthusiastically. I thought it might be good to get a second opinion, make sure everything's on track. Plus, I haven't gotten to hear the heartbeat yet, and I'm dying to experience that." The color drained from Lisa's face. "But I already have a doctor, Dr. Collins. She's been great." "This isn't about replacing Dr. Collins," I assured her. "It's just a consultation. Dr. Abernathy has this amazing 3D ultrasound technology that shows the baby in incredible detail. Wouldn't it be cool to have those images for our baby book?" Lisa set down her fork, her appetite apparently gone. "I don't think my insurance would cover a second doctor." "Don't worry about that. I'll pay out of pocket. It's worth it to me." I reached across the table to take her hand. "Please? It would mean a lot to be part of this process." She withdrew her hand, a flash of annoyance crossing her face. "I'm not feeling well today. Morning sickness. Can we talk about this later?" "Of course," I said, hiding my satisfaction at her discomfort. "Take all the time you need. The appointment isn't until Thursday. Though I should mention, Dr. Abernathy is booked months in advance. We were lucky to get this slot, a cancellation. If we reschedule, it might be weeks before we can get in again." Lisa excused herself from the table, and I heard the bathroom door close forcefully. I knew she wasn't actually sick. She was panicking, trying to figure out how to avoid an appointment that would instantly expose her lie. For the next 3 days, Lisa cycled through every avoidance tactic imaginable. She claimed to be too ill to leave the house, suggested that multiple doctor visits might be harmful to the baby, and even tried to schedule a last-minute business trip that would conveniently conflict with the appointment. Each excuse was met with my gentle but firm insistence that her health and the baby's well-being were too important to ignore. By Wednesday evening, she was cornered. "I need to tell you something," she said as we prepared for bed. Her voice was small, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." I sat on the edge of the bed, my expression carefully neutral. "What is it? Is something wrong with the baby?" Lisa took a deep breath. "There is no baby, Mark." Despite having known the truth for weeks, hearing the admission from her lips sent a wave of cold anger through me. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I never was pregnant," she said, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I was going to tell you, but then you got so excited, and things between us were finally good again, and I couldn't bear to ruin it." The performance was impressive. If I hadn't heard her laughing about her deception with her lover, I might almost have believed her remorse was genuine. "Why?" I asked simply. Lisa sat beside me, not quite touching. "Our marriage was falling apart. I knew you were thinking about divorce. I panicked. I thought a baby would give us a reason to try again, to remember what we once had. So you lied. You fabricated an entire pregnancy, complete with fake ultrasound images, all to manipulate me into staying in a marriage that was already dead." Her tears flowed faster. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to tell you I lost the baby in a few weeks, once we had reconnected. It was stupid and desperate and wrong. Can you ever forgive me?" I stood, moving away from her outstretched hand. "You're right about one thing. It was wrong. More than wrong. It was cruel and calculated." "I know," she whispered, "but I did it because I love you. Because I couldn't bear to lose you." "No, Lisa. You did it because you couldn't bear to lose my financial support." I walked to the dresser and removed a folder I had placed there earlier that day. "You did it because you saw an opportunity to secure yourself a comfortable future through fraud." I opened the folder and began laying out its contents on the bed. Printed transcripts of her phone conversations with her lover, screenshots of text messages discussing their scheme, photographs of her meeting him at a hotel on days she had claimed to be at doctor's appointments. Lisa stared at the evidence, her face transitioning from shock to fear. "How did you—" "I've known for weeks," I said calmly. Since the day I came home early and overheard you laughing with your boyfriend about how I was wallowing it all. Your exact words, I believe, were 9 months of lies for a lifetime of child support." Her mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. "What you didn't know," I continued, "is that while you were plotting to trap me, I was building a case against you. Every conversation, every text, every meeting with your lover, all documented and time-stamped, and those papers you so eagerly signed, they weren't just about protecting our non-existent child's future, they were about protecting me from you." I removed one final document from the folder and handed it to her. "This is a divorce petition, citing fraud and adultery. My lawyer filed it this morning. You'll also find a detailed explanation of the financial implications of the fraud provisions you agreed to in our family protection plan. I suggest you read it carefully." Lisa scanned the document, her face growing paler with each line. "This can't be legal. You tricked me into signing those papers." "I didn't trick you into anything. You signed legal documents without reading them, because you were too greedy and too focused on your own scheme to exercise basic caution. Every provision is valid and enforceable. James made sure of that." "You can't prove I was never pregnant," she argued, desperation creeping into her voice. "It would be my word against yours." "Actually, I can." I tapped the folder. "Your own words provide plenty of evidence, but more importantly, you just admitted it. And that admission has been recorded, with your knowledge and consent." I pointed to the small notification on her phone, which she had ignored in her distress. "Recording in progress." Lisa's face crumpled as the full impact of her situation hit her. Not only was her marriage over, but her scheme had backfired catastrophically. The very deception she had hoped would secure her financial future had instead left her with nothing. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. "That's not my concern anymore," I replied, gathering the evidence back into the folder. "You have 48 hours to remove your belongings from this house. Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property." I moved toward the door, then paused. "You thought you trapped me for life, but you only trapped yourself." The divorce proceedings were mercifully swift. Lisa, faced with overwhelming evidence of her deception, didn't contest the terms. The judge, after reviewing the case, had little sympathy for her attempted fraud and upheld all provisions of the documents she had signed. As for Lisa's lover, a colleague from her marketing firm named David, he quickly disappeared from her life when it became clear there would be no financial windfall to share. Last I heard, Lisa had moved to Chicago to live with her sister, her reputation and finances in tatters. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. The anger that sustained me through those dark weeks has faded, replaced by a weariness that lingers despite my best efforts to move forward. I've sold the house we shared, unable to separate it from the memories of betrayal that permeated every room. My new apartment downtown feels sterile but peaceful, a blank slate. James continues to check in regularly, concerned about my isolation. "You need to get back out there," he insists over our monthly dinners. "Date, reconnect, start living again." Perhaps he's right. But trust, once shattered so completely, isn't easily rebuilt. For now, I'm content to focus on my work, to rebuild my sense of self outside the context of the marriage that nearly destroyed me. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I allow myself to imagine the child that never existed, the son or daughter who might have brought joy instead of pain. It's a bittersweet exercise, dwelling on a future that was never really possible with a woman who saw our relationship as nothing more than a means to an end. But then I remind myself of what I've gained: freedom from a toxic marriage, wisdom born of harsh experience, and perhaps most importantly, the knowledge that even in my darkest hour, I found the strength to fight back, to transform victimhood into victory. Lisa thought she had written the final chapter of our story. She never anticipated that I would rewrite the ending. Every now and then, I receive a text from an unknown number, an apology, a plea for reconciliation, a claim of continued love despite everything. I never respond. Some bridges once burned should remain in ashes. As I stand on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I raise my glass in a silent toast to lessons learned and battles won. The woman I loved never existed. The child we created was nothing but a lie. But the man who emerged from the wreckage of that deception, stronger, wiser, and finally free, he is very real indeed. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, his future looks bright. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.